invite, just change the table and, fresh waters and invite both of them on stage. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce them, though Mr. Devdutt Pattanaik needs no introduction, a renowned mythologist, storyteller, speaker, who bridges the gap between ancient wisdom and modern living. With a profound understanding of Indian mythology, he has reinterpreted the ancient epics and texts through the contemporary lens. His captivating narratives provide both the readers and audience deeper insights into not only philosophy and spirituality, but also leadership, governance, and management. A popular figure in both literary and corporate circles, he has authored and illustrated over 50 books, including Myth, Mithya, Jaya, and Pilgrim Nation. Known for his TED Talk and his TV shows such as Devlok and Business Sutra, he's a regular columnist for reputed newspapers, and I know the youngsters love him. So Mr. Devdutt Pattanaik, for you, big round of applause. Along with that, Ms. Mrinalini Padhee, an advocate, author, and social activist, brings her deep legal insights to the literary world. Co-author of Sahasrakshi, she's translated legal texts and penned thought-provoking articles on human rights. Passionate about storytelling, she's worked on documentaries and audio storytelling projects. Her work bridges law, literature, and social justice, making her a compelling voice in contemporary discourse. So a big round of applause as we invite both of them on stage. And time to rethink the past now. Over to you, Mrinalini ji.
Namaskar to all of you. As I was walking down with Devdutt Babu, if I may call you sir, I saw a lot of jealousy in the eyes of the audience that I happen to be here with you. That is destiny. Devdutt Babu, I believe, he has the unique blessings of Saraswati and Lakshmi. Though Lakshmi is Chanchala, but somehow you have the blessing of both the goddesses. He's one person I've been admiring because with his science background, I feel you have taken the mythology onto a cubicle and crucible and tried to dissect and almost to every molecule stage of mythology with its forward and backward chains. As said in your book, Ahimsa, I choose a dialogue. We should have a samvad and manthan because I have nothing to contribute. I've just to trigger your with my humble questions. Before we start, I'm sure the audience who are from the age of 80 to 8, the other way around, how do you manage at your young age? You have 47 books on mythology, 7 books for children. Kya karte ho? Kaise karte ho? And art, and I don't know what all you manage to do. How do you do all that?
So there is nothing else I do from morning to evening. But I'll try my best to speak in, I'll mix English and Odia if you don't mind.
Please.
So, the moment I wake up in the morning, I'm writing mythology. I'm writing all the time. Because it's my research and my writing happens simultaneously. Bahut research because you have to read a lot. You have to read really a lot. Really a lot. And so it's scholarship. You have to read, you have to present. But you see, knowledge has no value. It's like cooking. If you know how to cook, but you have to cook for children, you have to cook for adults, you have to cook for someone who has got diabetes, you have to cook for someone who is old, young. So you write for different audiences. You don't compromise on the content. But you want to write it for a senior person, you want to write it for a scholar, you want to write it for a child. So you have to work very hard. Yes. How do you tell the same story to a child? It's Ramayana for children. How do you write Ramayana for children? How do you write Ramayana for a 20-year-old? How do you write Ramayana for a 50-year-old? How do you write Ramayana for someone who's not from India? So foreigners. How do you write Ramayana for a scholar? Who is a Ramayana scholar? So you have to keep calibrating your work for different audiences. And so that is the output. So there is an input, which is all the research that you do, but output is very important. So, you know, it's both. You have to work
A
on both.
great round of applause for one person being able to address this range of age groups. Now coming back to the topic in hand, Devdutt Babu, I'd like to say, why is historiography asked to the world's most foremost and famous and advanced mythologist?
So people, see, one of the biggest confusions that people have is history or mythology ke bare mein samjhao. Like for 30 years I've been asked this question, and it will be asked because everybody wants to know कि यार mythology और history में फ़र्क क्या है, and people are interested in knowing this. So they are two very different subjects. It's like physics is different from chemistry, you know, law is different from finance, history is different from mythology. So history is about the past. Mythology is about how people imagine the world. So ek mein itihas, when we see the word itihas is another problem, but we'll come to that. Let's look at the English words. History and mythology, if you lived 300 years ago, there was no difference. Nobody bothered with these two words. Whatever you say is the past is past. But about 150 years ago, the subject of history was invented. And people said, ki, I want to know about the past based on evidence. There has to be praman. So historians today, there is some great historians in this room, you know, there's Umakant Mishra over here from, you know, so I read his work. I mean, he's here because I met him through his papers. And these are scholars who will try to tell you about the past based on evidence. So what is there? The textual evidence, archaeological evidence, they will not tell you anything without there being proof. Mythology doesn't bother with the past. Mythology is how did people imagine the world? So how do you imagine? So it's about imagination. It is not about events. So when people ask me, so that is the big difference. History is about evidence. Mythology is about imagination, which is presented through stories, symbols, and rituals.
Okay.
So when I go to a temple, I can see a symbol, I can see a ritual. So here we have one of India's greatest sculptures. You know, he makes one of the most beautiful. But those images, when he does an image, what is that? Why is Vishnu holding a shank?
Yeah.
Why are there 4 hands? Why are there 6 hands? No, that's not, they are trying to communicate a symbol. It's a pratik. It's symbolic. So symbol language, metaphors, bhavarth is important. Shabdarth is not important. Bhavarth is important. History, bhavarth is not important.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. I remember during the short research that I did for my book, I was amazed to know that there were queens who have built or been instrumental in building your Lalitgiri, Udayagiri, and Ratnagiri. So how would you talk about Buddhism, Tantric Buddhism?
So when people talk about Odisha, even I, you know, our beginning and end is Jagannath. Everything revolves around Jagannath. But when I come to Bhubaneswar and somebody tells me, you know, what do I do? I have only one day in Bhubaneswar. I will tell them, go and see the Chausashta Yogini temple, which is here at Hirapur. A friend is here and I told him, go and see. Because that temple, nobody knows how it was built, what was the purpose. Because it is a very unusual temple. There are 64 women standing in a circle. There is no roof. It was built 1,000 years ago. Who built it? Why did they build it? We don't know.
Okay.
Then you have Parshurameshwar temple, again in Bhubaneswar, and you see some of the art. It is one of the oldest temples in India. One of the oldest temples in India. And you see images of Shiva and Parvati for the first time, sitting together in a friendly position. You don't see this image before.
Okay.
And Then you see the Jagannath temple happening. So you suddenly see that when you're talking about, but
Tantrism.
nobody talks about Buddhist part. So it's all Hindu. You have this Chausashta Yogini, which sort of Hindu, maybe because Shivji is there. Then there is Parshurameshwar is Hindu. Then you see Jagannath temple, which is Hindu, Vaishnav. So Shakta, Vaishnava, Shaiva, nobody talks about, when you talk about Buddhism, you will talk about Sarnath, you will talk about Sanchi, Barhut, Ashoka. At most you will say, Arey, wo Kalinga war hua tha in,
Odisha,
here, Dhauli and all that. But nobody realizes that this Odisha is one of the earliest and the most biggest sites of Tantric Buddhism.
Wow.
It is the most important site of Tantric Buddhism. There are mandalas over here, the earliest architect, and I know this because of Umakant Babu, because I read his papers accidentally. I'm Googling, and I'm reading these papers, I'm saying, who is this person? Let me write to him, and then he replies to me. So you suddenly realize people are doing this work in Odisha, and the world doesn't know about it. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about the rich Tantric Buddhist heritage of Odisha.
Absolutely.
The huge, and you see what I read is that the Tantric mandalas, which are here, were first created in Odisha. From here it goes to Java, Borobudur. So if you go to Borobudur in Java, which is across the sea, 800 AD, you find this image over there. Then from here it goes to Nepal and Tibet.
Indonesia also.
So Indonesia on this side, then it goes, Padmasambhava story is Uddiyana, and people always talk of Uddiyana, and Uddiyana comes from Odisha. Shambhala is Sambhalpur.
Yeah.
So the great Buddhist heritage of is not known because we don't talk about it. So I said, in every forum I go, I talk about Tantric Buddhism. UPSC students applying, I said, tell me about Tantric Buddhism. You know about Hinayana, tell me where is the Tantric Buddhist site? They'll say Tibet. I says, no, you don't know about Odisha side. So Ratnagiri, do you know about Lalitgiri? And you know what is unique about this? These are Buddhist sites where you'll see more female images than anywhere else.
Yes, that's right.
All other Buddhist sites, there are no female images, very few female images. But in these Lalitgiri, Udaygiri, these sites, you'll find a lot of goddesses. Lots and lots of goddesses, which is very unique. Hundreds of these women.
And I must tell you that Indonesia is one of the partners, I believe, of KLF.
Oh,
so
it
round of applause again for.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that we have that the.
Bali Jatra, no?
Yeah.
Bali Jatra happens to this.
Again, as far as the topic of this evening is concerned, there are two words which are there. One is Itihas and the other is Purana. And history of mythology, as you said. So how old are these words, Itihas and Purana themselves?
So in the Vedas, like Chandogya Upanishad, which is about 2,800 years old, refers to Itihasa Purana. Now in Sanskrit when you say Itihasa Purana, and in Odia or Hindi when you say Itihasa Purana, it has two different meanings. So in Sanskrit it has a different meaning, and in today when I say Itihas we mean history. It is a synonym for Praman, evidence-based history, which is modern history.
Okay.
That is a Hindi word, Odia word, today's word. But when in Chandogya Upanishads they are saying Itihasa Purana, they mean completely different things.
Oh.
So let's first understand that. When they say Itihasa, they are saying, tell me stories of great kings which have been witnessed by a person. So Ramayana is Itihas because Valmiki saw Ram and told the story. He was present. So it's like reporting. Mahabharata is Itihas because Vyasa is part of the story. He is present in the story.
Okay.
So Itihasa means the storyteller is part of the story. And Purana is about gods. Nobody can see the world of the gods. So you have to hear from, I have heard. So Shiva's story will be Purana.
Okay.
Shiva Parvati, Daksha Prajapati, Ganpati, Kartikeya, these are Purana.
Okay.
Vaikuntha Purana. But Ramayana and Mahabharata, because Ramayana is Valmiki witnessed it, Mahabharata Vyasa witnessed it, they become Itihasa. So it's a very different meaning. And all of these are, but if you read the Vedic scriptures, like the Brahmana literature, Shatapatha Brahmana, Jamyana Brahmana, these are prose texts where there is no Ramayana Mahabharata. So hundreds of akhyans are there. There are lots and lots of akhyans in the Vedas. They are called Itihasa Purana, but there is no Ram and Krishna, no Vishnu, nothing of that. So I'll give you an example of one story. I'll tell you one story from the Vedas, which I don't know whether you've ever heard it. So the story is of Bhrigu, a young boy who, उसको एक सपना आता है, तो he is dreaming, और उस सपने में वो देखता है कि मुझे कोई खा रहा है, somebody is eating me, and he sees Narabhaksha, the cannibals, everywhere he sees cannibals, and some people are screaming like animals, and some people are screaming without any sound, so it's a silent scream. And this is from the Vedas, okay? This is Jamina Brahmana, Shatapatha Brahmana, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So the screaming is happening. So he comes to his father and says, Father, why are they screaming? And why are they screaming like animals? And why are they screaming silently? And the father says, Ki, when you're eating, if you eat an animal, in your next life, that animal will eat you. And you will scream like that animal. So he says, what about silent screaming? He says, all the plants you are eating, in your next life, the plant will eat you, but plants can't scream, so you will also not scream.
My God, what a concept.
So this story is from the Vedas, which says life is like vegetables may be life hai, plants have life, animals have life, and अगर तुमने इस जन्म में खाया है तो अगले जन्म में तुमको कोई खाएगा. So this is karma. So if you eat in this life, the next life you will eat. Somebody will eat you. In this life, if you have exploited someone, next life somebody will exploit you. So this is Vedic thought. This is before Ramayana Mahabharata. These stories are not there in the Ramayana Mahabharata. That's why it's not there in Amar Chitra Katha. Nobody. I had to ask a scholar, Seema Sontak, she's a Sanskrit scholar in Bombay University. I told her, please translate this for me. So she went through each and every grantha and said, remove 100 stories for me. And there are such strange stories like this one. Or there is a story of a king and his a Brahmin going on a chariot. Like Ajkal wo driving they are doing. Or when they're driving, the car hits, the chariot hits a boy, little baby, and the baby dies. And the king says to his driver, you are responsible. And he says, but it is your ratha. So who is responsible, the owner of the car or the driver of the car? He said, you told me to go fast, I went fast. The child died. Who is responsible? This is a Vedic story. So today we have road accidents. And I remember 2,800 years ago, but nobody tells, we are only talking Ramayana Mahabharata. Ramayana Mahabharata is around, much later. These are the old akhyans. These are very, very old akhyans.
But Devdutt Babu, when we are talking about Mahabharata and imagination and all, what about Sarala Das's Mahabharata, since we are in Odisha, and what about Nabagunjara?
So, see, now let's imagine, okay, so when does Sarala Das's Mahabharata come? 500 years ago, 600 years ago. Odisha is, a new king is coming to. The Gajapatis are emerging. It's a new, and whenever a king takes over, now this is the rule of kings, they will support new architecture and new literature. So even now when you see the new government comes, the first thing they'll do is they'll build a new building and statues. So nobody will forget them. कि नया मूर्ति बनाएंगे ताकि कोई मुझे नहीं भूलेगा. वैसे ही पुराने ज़माने में जो राजा होते थे, वो पहले कोई मंदिर बनाएंगे या कोई लेखक को कहेंगे कि तुम काव्य लिखो. And because Gajapatis were the patrons of Odia literature, and this is where Odia literature sort of bursts into the, and becomes very, very big. Till then it was very rural, but then suddenly it becomes Kavya literature. You have, and he was probably a soldier. Sarala Das was probably a soldier.
Yes.
That's what I've heard. I'm not.
Corridor, he was.
So he writes this poetry, and it is not a translation of the Vyasa Mahabharata. It is a very different story with unique stories inside, which you don't find in the Sanskrit Mahabharata. So I've been talking to B.N. Pattanaik, who translated many of his Sarala Das's work, and we're trying to now bring it in Hindi. So the thing is, because the Hindi belt is clueless. When I ask them, tell me the oldest Mahabharat written in a non-Sanskrit language, they don't know. I said, it is Odia.
My God, I think we need to appreciate Sarala Babu in all this.
Because in Ramayana, it is Tamil. In Ramayana, everybody knows Kamba Ramayana. Kamba Ramayana was the first non-Sanskrit work which was written by Kamba in Tamil Nadu. But in Mahabharata, the first is from Odisha, done by Sarala Das, and in that, he tells these new stories, and one of those stories is the Nabagunjara story, which is not found anywhere else in the world. But now let me explain how imagination works. How does imagination work? Why are you telling the story of Nabagunjara? So, when you read, let me explain how you see it. When you read Greek mythology, so everybody likes Greek mythology, there is a character called Chimera. Or if you read Harry Potter, they will show all these dragons and demons. So, Chimera is this animal. Chimera is an animal which is part goat, part lion, part serpent. So 3 animals. 1/3 goat, 1/3 snake, 1/3 lion. And the hero looks at this animal and says, oh, this is an unnatural animal, let me destroy it. And so in Greek mythology, whenever you find these animals which are mixed, they are considered to be monsters and they are killed by the heroes. In India, in Sarala Das's Mahabharata, when Arjun sees a creature which he has never seen before, and there are 9 animals, and I always, when I work with children, I tell them, please identify the 9 animals. So there is a rooster, there is a peacock, there is a bull, there is a tiger, there is a lion, there is a serpent, there is an elephant. So 9 animals. And what is your instinct when you see something unknown? जब कुछ तुम्हें समझ नहीं आता है, पहली बार उसको देखते हो, ऐसे जानवर तुमने कभी देखा नहीं है, तो तुमको डर लगता है. तो आप क्या करते हो? आप इनसिक्योर बन जाते हो. जब इनसिक्योर बन जाते हो तो हाथ में आप तलवार निकालते हो. And Arjun, what he does is he removes his Gandhi and says, मैं इसको मारने वाला हूँ. But then he sees that in his human hand there is a lotus flower. And Arjun realizes कि जो तुम्हें समझ में नहीं आता है वो राक्षस नहीं होता है. हमारे देश में जो समझ में नहीं आता है उसे हम भगवान कहते हैं. क्योंकि यहीं से the unknown will take you towards wisdom. So if you are the unfamiliar, the unknown is the doorway to Saraswati. So Sarala Das is showing us the Indian way of thinking कि जब कुछ नया चीज देखते हो उसको destroy मत करो, उसको समझो.
As an answer to Greek philosophy.
So the Greek philosophy is everybody has to fit into the mold, into the classification system. While Sarala Das is saying everybody doesn't have to fit into everything. So nowadays, for example, in the West, there is this big conversation happening about trans people, gay people, lesbian people. And Sarala Das is looking at it and saying that everybody doesn't have to fit into a box. Yes. You will have men who are slightly feminine. You will have women who are slightly masculine. You will have all kinds of permutations and combination. In many ways, he is making fun of Manusmriti. Because in Manusmriti, he says Chatur Varna, 4 Varna, and there should be no Ullangan. And he is saying, no, but in God will kya, 4 kya, 9 aaj जानवरों को लेके आऊंगा मैं. And now you try to classify it. Okay. Is it a vegetarian animal? Is it a non-vegetarian animal? Is it a reptile? Is it a bird? Yeah. Classify करके दिखाओ.
Very clever.
So this is Sarala Das saying that not everything can be classified. Yes. इतना भी arrogance मत रखो कि तुम सब कुछ को you'll put everything in a box. We tell not to think out of the box. Yes. And Sarala Das is saying there is no box. The divine doesn't care for your box. The divine will not fit into your box. You may say, which zoology may we learn, na, reptile is this, bird is this. Where do you put Nabagunjara? It is a reptile also. It is a herbivorous, it is carnivorous, it is a reptile, it is a bird. Is it human? Because there is a human hand over there. Sarala Das is making you think. And I think that symbol is such a sophisticated modern idea 500 years ago.
And it took us so long to recognize it.
It is there. See, symbols are there. It is like Saraswati. She is sitting and saying, I will be there. When you become smart, you will discover me.
That's true. But when you say that at times it's imagination which turns into accepted as history, I think we were talking about also Radhanath Ray's poem of 19th century of Nandi Kesari. It is adapted from a Greek, you were saying?
Yes. So what happens is, in the see, the purpose of mythology is to shape your imagination. It is not telling you what happened in the past. So when you read Ramayana and Mahabharata, it is not about Ram lived 2000 years ago. It is not about whether Mahabharata happened or did not. It is like, what does it do to your mind?
Yeah.
What does it do to your mind? What does it tell you about dharma? What does it tell you about justice? What does it tell you about life? Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. If you want to understand, read Ramayana and Mahabharata. If you read history, you won't get dharma, artha, kama, moksha. You will ask questions like, is he right? Is he wrong? Ye sach tha. Nowadays this controversy, Mughals are there and some Marathas are there and this is right. But when you read history, you will get uttejit. You will get angry. So politicians love history. But if you read mythology, it will give you wisdom. It will give you shanti. Because it is about jnana and it is about wisdom. जो mythology पढ़ता है वो अहिंसा के तरफ जाएगा. जो history पढ़ता है वो हिंसा के तरफ जाएगा. Now, if you look at the
Nandi Kesari.
Nandi Kesari story, now in the 19th century, we wanted to create a story about Odisha. There were no big epics, historical epics, and so he created a story where he says how Ganga Chodadev comes and the old king, the Somavanshi king's daughter, gives him this magical gem and says, now you can defeat my father. And then the great king says that, no, I will prove my valor through my own, I don't need this magic.
Yeah,
Now that's a Greek story. It's a story of Minos. So obviously the author has read the Greek story and he's inspired by the Greek story and he says, okay, now it's like mythological fiction. Nowadays people write mythological fiction. This is historical fiction where he mixes.
In 19th century.
Even Michael Madhusudan Dutt wrote Meghanada Vadha in Bengali, but that is more famous than this one, by the way. It always is, na? Bengali texts usually get more attention.
Because they used to say earlier that Odia ekta bhasha noy.
So you have this tendency of taking, so historical fiction, mythological fiction are part of history. But if I am saying this is history, this is mythology, then comes historical fiction, mythological fiction. And in fiction, it is not about a culture, it is about the writer. So the writer is a lawyer or a judge who is telling you, like for example, if I write a historical fiction on Gajapati, then I'll have a point of view. Like I remember somebody telling me about Chodaganga Dev and he told me that, he actually used a lot of tantric arts. And there is this Dhobini and all kinds of tantric goddesses. That's why he said he used a lot of tantra to win. Now that's one version. Another is telling me Greek mythology ka fiction. So which is true, the historian will sort of have his own views.
Because as Radhanath Rai said, that apparently Chodaganga Dev returned that jewel, saying that Rajya hetu rajye nahi mo lalasa, dharma sthapivaku ekanta bharasa. That I will not go this way to get Rajya. So that was, I think, was amazing of him.
So this is a work of literature, but if you start believing that literature is history, then you have a problem. Literature is not history. It's great literature. It's kavya. It's like Kalidas, when he writes Shakuntalayam, that is literature. Kalidas's Shakuntalayam is very different from Mahabharata ka Shakuntala. I'll give you a difference. Mahabharata Shakuntala and Kalidas Shakuntala are very different. In Kalidas's Shakuntala, when she is pregnant, the father says, oh, now you should go to your husband's house. And then you go to the husband, and then this famous story of her going and the husband rejecting her. But in the Mahabharata Shakuntala, the father doesn't say anything. He says, oh, wonderful, you're pregnant. Very nice. The son is born. See, nobody cares because they are all in the forest. No, they are tapasvis. They don't believe in marriage. They have no interest in marriage. Then the child says, who is my father? So the mother says, okay, I'll take you to the father. And introduces him to Dushyanta. And Dushyanta says, oh, you want my property. That is why you have come with your son. And she says, I am from the forest. We don't believe in marriage. We don't believe in property. ऋषि कन्या हम लोग हैं. हमको ये समझ में नहीं आता है तुम क्या बात कर रहे हो. I have just come to introduce my son to you. Now this is modern. Kalidas is writing in 500 AD where he's talking about the shame of a woman who gets pregnant outside marriage, which is what is shown on television. But in the Mahabharata, which is written 2100 years ago, which is Sanskrit literature, there Shakuntala doesn't care. She's like, I'm a Rishi Kanya. I don't care for marriage, I don't care for husband, I don't care for property. My son wants to know who is the biological father. So I'm introducing you. You don't want to accept, that is your problem. That is not my problem. Now this is like a 21st century feminist talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when somebody tells me, oh, feminism is 21st century, I'll say, I'll show you stories from Mahabharata where marriage is not important. Like Kunti tells Pandu, ki once upon a time, nobody got married. Men went to women, women went to men. We just produced babies. But the day you wanted to pass property to your son, now you, and as a lawyer you will know, right? Legitimacy, inheritance. फिर तुमको बच्चा चाहिए. And Shvetaketu said, I want to know who my father is, and therefore he introduced the law of marriage, which means in Mahabharata, that's why they don't read Mahabharata inside the house. Because then you will discover, once upon a time in India, marriage was not important. You don't want your daughters and son to learn that, no? नहीं 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 हमारे सभ्यता रे कौन होबो संस्कार संस्कृति रे कौन होबो
नुचा नुचा से
महाभारत घरे रखना.
That is so true. And also, as you were saying that Sarala Das's Mahabharata should be more popular in Odisha, in the sense that school, college, manakare, I think we should be.
I think every culture, every state, because I live in Bombay, and you just look at the water. So just tell us about the time.
How much time do we have? Because time just flows when we're talking to Devdutt Babu.
So, you know, the thing is, in Maharashtra, I grew up in Maharashtra, and many people, when I was children, never knew where Odisha was. We grew up by saying, "Aap Odisha kidhar hai?" Bengal ke east mein hai, west mein hai. So I had to say Puri Jagannath, they would recognize. They would not understand Odisha, but they would understand Puri Jagannath. So people don't know about, like for example, I didn't know about the Tantric Buddhist. I didn't, now Sarala Das, 10. So if we as Odiyas don't talk about our culture, and you know, the thing is, if wherever I go, I'm very clearly saying that no, I'm a non-resident Odiya because I live in Bombay and I speak Marathi fluently. And I really am comfortable in Marathi, but I make sure that my Marathi, so in my house, we had Pokhara Divas yesterday, right? It was, so I had my photograph on my Facebook, and there it was, that, you know, there is Pokhara Divas. And I'm like, talk about your culture, whatever it is, talk about your habits, because otherwise the next generation won't know.
Yes.
If you don't pass it on to the next generation, if parents don't give it to their children, who will give it to their children? So I know Odia because my parents spoke Odia.
That is true.
If you come to my house, there'll be an image of Jagannath kept over there. So these are things my parents gave me. Even in Bombay, far away, you have no connection with Odisha really, but then the Jagannath is there, the Pakhala is there, the, you know, my mother would do that Sudasa Vrata and all those things. So I know this only because of what she would cook on that day. So,
That's it. Just as a side, I just wanted to know, Ramayana actually, when was the manuscript found physically?
So the manuscripts are there. If you want to study the Ramayana, you have to go to Baroda. Baroda has the Oriental Institute. Baroda, it has all the manuscripts. These were collected in the 19th century.
Oh.
Now the oldest manuscript is only 14th century or 10th, like 14th. But they were written in Tadapatra, so they had to be repeated. And when you read the language, you realize that it is not Vedic Sanskrit. It is not Panini Sanskrit. It is
Avadhi?
no, not Avadhi. Avadhi is much later. Avadhi is only 500 years old. Awadhi is 500-600 years old. This is definitely, so dating the manuscript, you know the manuscript is roughly 2000 years old. Now let me tell you how you know it is 2000 years old. Because it talks, you know, you have heard the story of Ram's ring, which he gives. Ram ko Sita ke liye wo ring deta hai, jahan pe Ram likha hai.
Hanuman gives.
Hanuman goes and gives that ring. So that ring historically was first produced by Indo-Greeks in 100 BC. Before that, you don't find it in India. So that is how you, or for example, in the Sundarkand, when Hanuman goes to Lanka, he describes the Pushpaka Viman and says, the symbol of Lakshmi I could see. And the first time the image of Lakshmi is found anywhere in India is again in Barhut and Sanchi, which is about 100 BC. So the Yavanas are 100 BC. The Barhut Lakshmi is 100 BC. So now you look at the manuscript and say probably it was written around 100 BC. But in the Bharadwaja ashram, Valmiki says that the scripture says that Shaka, Pallava fought the war. Now Shakas, Pallavas fight the war around 100 AD, much later. He doesn't, so then you're saying, okay, how does he know about these things? It is later. It mentions China. India came into contact with China only in 200 AD. So if Valmiki, the manuscript mentions China, then it has to be around 200 AD, 100 AD. So Shatavahan period, the Shatavahan kings, when they were ruling India, is roughly when the manuscript was written. How old is the story? That is anyone's guess. But I'll give you an understanding of how you can sense the story. When they talk about Ayodhya, Kishkinda, Lanka, they say the city has full of sal ke ped, sal ke ped. Sal trees are only found in near Himalaya, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand and Odisha. It is not found in the south of India. So could it be that the original story, the Lanka, the Kishkinda, is all located in the Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Odisha area? And you know that if you go to western Odisha, there are places called Sonpur, Sone ki Lanka, there's Lankeshwari. The kings in the 10th and 12th century said that is Paschim Lanka. And in the 15th century, in Chhattisgarh, the kings of Gond made coins saying Paulatsya, we are the descendants of Ravan. So the entire story is near Sirpur, Raipur, Sambhalpur.
Hey Bhagavan. My God.
But this is an old, but then as time passes, you find that when the Vijayanagar Empire became very big, when the Chalukya kings were there, the Vijayanagar, they said no. Kishkinda is in Karnataka region, Deccan region. When the Cholas became very powerful in the 10th century, they said, and they always fought with Sri Lanka. So they said that land from where they got all the copper is Ravana land. And that is when the concept of Setupati, the title Setupati comes in 10th century. So if you say the oldest layer of Ramayana is only talking till Odisha, not beyond that. Then you Chalukya period, it comes to Deccan region. Chola period, it goes right up to the south. That's when Kamba Ramayana is written. So there is a historical evolution of a mythological story.
Wow.
समय के साथ अभी इतना पढ़ना पड़ता है ना.
अब पता चला.
तो पखाड़ा helps. But this kind of knowledge is complicated. And nobody likes complicated language. Everybody likes simple things. See, Trump is so simple. So he's very popular. But unfortunately, scholarship, whether it's mythology, history, geography, you have to study a lot. I mean, I never thought I would read history. I am interested only in mythology. But then to understand mythology, I have to read history. In order to understand mythology, I have to study art, geography. I never knew about geography. Sonpur kidhar hai. Now I'm telling people, do you know there is a festival in Odisha called Lonka Podi? Nobody has heard of Lonka Podi. But I'm like, look, there's a monkey over there. Look how they're burning the tail. It is not Ravan ka Dahan. It is Dahan of Lanka, performed in a region which is called Subarna Rekha river is there, Sonpur is there, and Lankeshwari goddess is there. When I went to Sri Lanka, in Sri Lanka there is no reference to Ravan. Now the tourism is going on because tourism is tourism, good for money. But there is no Sinhala story of Ramayana. It is not there. Now it's becoming very popular because of tourism, but Odisha has a culture. Chhattisgarh has a culture. We should not lose these things. We should remember these things.
Absolutely. I think that's a big takeaway from this talk here by you, sir. But Gute, it might sound a little trivial to others. Mokhale bujhau chauntili that when we talk about Itihas and Purana, where do we locate Shiva's family, which includes Kartik and Ganesha?
So Shiva comes in the Puranic tradition. It won't come in the Itihasa tradition because Itihasa has Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga. So Yugas become important. Shiva is outside the Yuga, not inside the Yuga. So Indian time is divided into two parts. जो युग के बाहर है और जो युग के भीतर है. So Vaikuntha is outside Yuga. Kailasa is outside Yuga. But Ram and Krishna are inside Yuga because that is why Ram has a birth and death. He is born of Kaushalya and he dies at Sarayu river. तो उसका जन्म है, मृत्यु है. कृष्ण का जन्म है, मृत्यु है. So Krishna, there is Devaki, Yashoda, and then he dies in the Sauptika Parva. So there is a clear birth. But when you talk about Vishnu, there is no Swayambhu, no birth, no death. Shiva, no birth, no death. Now look at Kailas Parbat. Now look at how imagination is done. I want to tell you that there is a world where there is no, jahan bhook nahi hai, jahan bhay nahi hai. I want to explain this concept to you. The bhavarth, how do I create this? I'll say, अच्छा देखो, कैलाश पर्वत है, शिव जी के गले में क्या है? नाग है. नाग खाता क्या है? चूहा. चूहा किधर है? गणपति के पास. नाग को खाता कौन है? मोर. मोर किधर है? कार्तिकेय के पास. लेकिन कोई खा नहीं रहा है. क्यों? किसी को डर नहीं लग रहा है, क्योंकि किसी को भूख नहीं है. जो भूख के ऊपर विजय प्राप्त करता है, वो कैलाश पर्वत पहुंच जाता है. So that is
the imagery. My God.
So Deva and Mahadev, Dev जो होता है, उसको भूख लगता है. So when you worship Indra, Deva, you give Naivedya. उनको भूख लगा है. And you take prasad. Food is a vocabulary. शिव जी के यहाँ भूख नहीं लगती. तो तुम नैवेद्य दो मत दो, कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता है शिव जी को. Because it is the world out, so he is Mahadev, not Deva, he is Mahadev. So that is how you are explaining the concept of, you are telling a concept, bhavartha. It is not historical. I'll go to Kailas Parbat in China and find where Shiva lives. और यहाँ शिव जी बैठते थे, यहाँ शिव जी खाते थे. You are missing bhavartha. भाव को देखो. Shabd arth. I said the politicians only like shabdartha. Lawyers love shabdartha. But you know the spirit of the law. Bhavartha. Spirit of the law, the spirit of the artwork. So when you see the image of Shiva Parivar, they are telling you, look at this family. They don't expect anything from each other, therefore they are happy.
Yeah, do we have time for just one last issue, one last? Is that very close to my heart, is that notion of justice, myth and history or ideology. As a lady and a lawyer, concept like justice, equal rights, and how do you see the question of Ahalya, what we did to her, or Sita, or even Draupadi?
Okay, so so justice, as we call it, and karma are totally different concepts. The idea of justice comes from a culture which believes you live only once. So you have a birth and you have a death. That's it. And then God will judge you on Qayamat, judgment day. So you have one life. God has given you laws, which is the commandments. You follow the law. At the end of your death, God will see and say, have you followed the rule? Halal, haram. If you have followed the rules halal, you will go to Jannat. If you have broken the rules haram, you will go to Jahannam. So it's a linear story with a beginning and an end. Indian philosophy will say there is no beginning or end. Before the beginning there is something, after the beginning there is something. There is Anadi and Ananta. So you are born into privilege. You didn't choose. Privilege has always been there in this world. It will never go away. So some will be born in a rich family, some will be born in a poor family. You cannot have the same law for them. Because the poor person cannot afford the lawyer which the rich person can afford. So everybody knows that.
Why do you keep coming back to law?
You asked about justice. So the fact is, justice as a system, while it is important for a nation state to function, India will bring a philosophy that while it is, niti is important, danda niti is important, but be careful, be aware that there is a complicated system in the world. The rich, if you come into a privileged family, it is karma. So much of the past, you can't negate the past. You can't, today, you will not solve all the problems in this life. Next life, the problems will continue.
Like prarabdha.
Prarabdha, what is called prarabdha. So now when you see the story of Ahalya, when you see the story of Sita, you must factor in rebirth, punarjanma, in different lives. So I'll give you an example, not of Ahalya, not of, because these are topics by itself. So if you're interested, please buy my books. 199 rupees. Yeah. Answer wahan pe hai. But I'm going to give you one example of how to see a story based on rebirth using Ramayana Mahabharata. Okay, and then we can wind up. Sorry about this. But in Ramayana, Sugriva is helped by Ram and Vali is killed.
Yeah, from behind.
That everybody say, "Arey Vali ko galat se hi mara." Now look at the story. Sugriva is the son of the sun god, and Vali is the son of Indra. Indraputra, Suryaputra. So Ram supports Suryaputra against Indraputra. Ramayana. Now next life, Krishna is born. He now will support Indraputra Arjun against Suryaputra Karna.
My God. Bola tha na, backward chaining, forward chaining.
So now when you see the story, if you see only one story, you'll say unjust, there's no justice. If you see the story of Karna, there's no justice. But if you see Ramayana and Mahabharata together, you'll say, "Arey, hisab kitab barabar ho gaya."
Oh my God.
That is karma.
Thank you so much, Devdutt Babu. And it has been a great experience. And
she's my cousin sister. We discovered it because of KLF. I wouldn't have met her ever.
Only if I was 1/3 of the celebrity that you are. During this talk, Devdutt Babu, I could see the jigyasa in a divine form in you, and your enthusiasm, as they say, it's enthusiasm is from a Greek word called antheos, which is God within. And this evening, I'm sure all of you, all of us, have had a glimpse of the God within you. Thank you so much.
Lovely. What a wonderful session. I'll request Mr. Ashok Baraji to please come on stage, do the honors and felicitate them. And I was seeing it's a wonderful, contrast that we saw. We saw a different kind of excitement in his voice, and there was a very calm thing in her voice. So I think it was a wonderful mixture that we saw on stage here. So yes, can we have a small token of appreciation from the KLF family? And yes, we'll request everybody, please be seated because we still have something very, very exciting coming up.